Yep. All right. So let's talk about some of this because I've heard from Republicans a lot in the last few weeks. If Kamala Harris says she's going to do it now, why didn't she do it in the last 3.5 years? Let me flip that the other way. Donald Trump says he wants to lower the corporate tax rate to 15%. If he couldn't do that in 2017, Tim, why should we believe that he could do it now?
Well, Blake, I think the biggest thing about this election that sets up the Donald Trump's advantage is that people have had the chance to live through both administrations. First the Trump administration and now the Biden-Harris administration. People know that Donald Trump is a tax cutter. He passed the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. It was the largest tax cut in the history of this country. He is absolutely known as a tax cutter, and the fact that he's going to now lower taxes even more should be celebrated. Yes, he's going to do it even more. This is not a case of why didn't he do it the first time? He did do it the first time, and now he's going to do some more of it. And this sets up
But he didn't get it to the level that he's talking about now, and I guess if not then, why now?
Blake, the United States had the strongest economy in the world before COVID struck the world, and it was because of Donald Trump's policies. We now see the complete reversal of those policies. Kamala Harris says that she'll let the Trump tax cuts expire. He will not. He's adding more tax cuts on top of that. If this race boils down, I am so glad we were having this conversation, to be honest with you. If this race boils down, if this race boils down to who Americans trust to make life more affordable for them, for everyday Americans, if that's the conversation that we have, Donald Trump wins this race in a walk. Let's look at
Trump
the corporate tax thing that she's talking about, that we're talking about. Cutting the corporate rate to 15% only for companies that keep jobs in the United States and produce their products in the United States is a way to grow jobs in this country. Kamala Harris would raise the business tax rates. That's a great way to grow jobs in other countries. That's what this election is.
Yeah, and these are part of the differences. Let me ask you, Tim. Donald Trump talks about no taxes on tips. He talks about no taxes on Social Security checks. That costs money, right? Because it's not a revenue driver. We're not collecting those funds. Here was Donald Trump in 2016.
I just disagree with that. I don't accept.
Hold on. Let me ask you this though, because here was Trump in 2016, where he talked about he was going to reduce the debt over the course of 8 years. It was 19 trillion then. It's 35 trillion and counting by the second now. What happened to that Donald Trump? Because I don't hear him talking about that anymore.
Well, you just teased the news that he made today about Elon Musk and taking up Elon Musk's idea and putting together a commission to look at government inefficiencies. Elon Musk is a pretty smart guy. In addition, he's going to stop the Green New Deal dead in its tracks because you know that Biden and Harris tried to smuggle the Green New Deal inside the poorly named Inflation Reduction Act. All that stuff will end, and he will recoup any unspent funds from that. That is already a massive savings of about $1 trillion. I haven't done exactly the math on that, but all of these things will get written into legislation. Donald Trump is running to be president. He's not running to be president and a member of the House and Senate and all of Congress at the same time. He sets the agenda. And absolutely, the tax cut package of 2017 produced a massive amount of new revenue into the federal government. When you cut taxes, economic activity increases, tax revenues increase to the federal government. That's the way it works.
Yeah, it's part of the argument that Republicans certainly make, and I would just note deficits in fiscal year 2018 under Trump, $779 billion, fiscal year 2019, $989 billion. That's the other side of it. But let me ask you about Elon Musk, because at one point, Tim, as you remember, and I do, being at the White House, Elon Musk was on a presidential commission with Donald Trump, and he walked after Trump got out of the Paris Climate Accord. And I wonder if there's any assurances that Elon Musk won't just do the same if there's another Trump administration.
I mean, look, I think if you take a look at what Elon posts on X every single day, I think that he is very, very much in full voice in support of the policies that Donald Trump is pursuing and very much against the policies that Kamala Harris is pursuing. This boils down to a very simple equation when we're talking about economic questions. Who do Americans trust to steward the economy? Donald Trump, who gave us the best economy in the world, or Kamala Harris, who is part of the team that gave us massive inflation? It's a pretty easy choice. I will take this argument all day long.
Thank you for watching, and make sure you go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.